here. Okay, so this game was played in the Dan Heisman Learning Center. I know at the end, both sides were taking their time, but had some more time on the board. But I've already analyzed this with KtFighter, so I've gotten his insight into it. And now this is the Rosalimo Sicilian that Caruana was using against Carlson. Except that the exchange wasn't made getting the doubling of the pawns. So, for what it's worth, black has full equality and the bishop pair. But white has no weaknesses, so we have to rate the game as even. And now we transpose into the open Sicilian. And now, the interesting thing about the Sicilian defense, it almost gives black a strategically won middle game, and that's a pretty bold statement. But this game kind of illustrates that point better than others. Let's look at let me explain this to help. So one of the reasons Sicilian is a great way to play for a win with black. Okay, first off, black has a majority of center pawns. That's known to be a good thing. The next thing is the C file is more important for black than the D, and has more possibilities than the D file does for white. Even if black has a backward pawn on D6, or even if the pawn is up on E5 and there's a hole on D5. Boleslavsky proved that back in the 50s when the Russians developed the Sicilian defense. So one thing that black didn't understand here, though, was that the importance of this square. And I've talked to him about it before. We'll see that when it happens. Now, I've also experienced playing. Before I played the Sicilian defense, I played against it, so I had a lot of ideas as what to do with it, do against it, or do with it against the various things white would throw at me. And one thing I didn't mention about the strategic advantages, white does get a lot of kingside attacking chances in this opening. However, in this particular setup, it's a little more difficult to attack on the king side. One of the reasons is you're missing your light squared bishop. But my experience from being on the white side is this A3 move doesn't help white at all. Okay? If black wants to play B4, well, let him. Okay? But when you get down to the ending, these two pawns hold back these three. And you can verify that on your own. The best maybe white can do is end up getting a pass C pawn. The 3-on-2 majority is not mobile. Okay. And it's also my experience that whenever white plays F3 in the Sicilian, and just to solidify E4, that it doesn't yield him much. Now, here's the point where black missed his best shot, I think. Let's see. Maybe not yet. You still have one more chance at it. Yeah, okay. The key for black is to play knight A5. And this is one of the reasons why this A3 move it can haunt you. Okay, now, I ask a question when I analyze the game, what's white going to do? And the answer is we don't know. Okay, let's suppose he plays here. Well, we want to bring this knight into this square, because this puts pressure on B2. Okay, so should white retreat the bishop, we want to take note that this pawn on B2 is overworked. It's guarding two squares. It can't guard both. Should white later move this knight to, say, to G3 with ambitions of going for an attack, black could play knight takes A3, and if the pawn takes back, the queen will capture the unprotected knight. Now, it's not here in this case, but this is a very strong square. Now, if white seeks to, in this position, white can't play B3, because he'll hang his knight. He can't keep the knight out. So this was an important concept for black, but he didn't quite understand it, or had enough experience with it. But here, black is content with having the bishop versus the knight, but in reality, the position is pretty much even. For black to win this, he needs to trade the queens and the rooks. And in theory, the endgame is winnable by black, and I've covered that a few times. I may stop and cover it again after this game, because I think it bears repeating. But let's, through a famous game, let's go forward a little bit. So black's idea was to prepare for d5, which is a common break that black does want to do in the Sicilian. So before he sets it up, he doubles on the back rank. Okay, so, essentially the game is still pretty even. Black's advantage lies in the bishop versus the knight. Neither side has challenged the other. You're playing like Carlson and Caruana, guys. I guess that's a compliment. Okay, now more control over d5. And here it comes. Now here, I just want to point out that it's okay to do this. And after this exchange, just keep exchanging. Neither side is really getting anywhere here. And if you both agree to a draw in this position, it would be a perfectly good result. Now, we could argue that white has some threats here. He's threatening to take a pawn. He's threatening to back rank mate black. But black has counterplay here too, and may very well have a perpetual check starting with this move. And it would be perfectly acceptable to take the draw, because nothing is really happening here. So this move actually lets black keep the bishop and keeps winning chances alive for black. Okay, now some trades came. And, if black can trade queen for knight, or queen for queen, the bishop versus the knight will be in black's favor. But he finds a move to threaten a pin. You got to get out of that. Now the king is nice and centralized for the endgame. And here, there was always some latent back rank threats in here. This just eliminates them. Okay. And now here, the drawback with this move was it weakened a3, and that could have cost. It does cost white here in a few moves. So, essentially, you've got to be happy with the draw here. You can't put the knight here because f3 falls. But you could wiggle waggle the knight here, and black should try to find a way to negotiate a queen trade. But b3 weakens a3. Now, one drawback, you don't want to advance your pawns too far. Sometimes they can be vulnerable from behind. Now here, black goes under a misconception. Sometimes when you have an advantage, you have to trade one advantage in for a whole new one. Now the correct process here is to take. Now if you take back with the queen, black doesn't want to trade queens. Black wants to win a pawn. And now the bases are covered. And this is in black's favor. And it's up to white to prove that he can draw this, and white has the burden of proof over the next 20 to 40 moves to prove he can draw. In theory, black is winning. In practice, well, anything can happen. But you see, black had the idea that he had the bishop for the knight. He didn't want to give it up, so his idea was to chase it, and because it was defending c5, then give the check.
Check.
And now he does win the pawn. So in theory, black is still winning, but black has compromised his position slightly, and that's because these pawns are now weakened. So bring the queen back. And this is a smart move. Get your pawns on the opposite color of the bishop because they're not a target. It does soften you up, down here on the light squares, but, right now black's not getting ready to penetrate in any way, shape, or form. He wants to, but he's just not going to be able to. And
check.
Here, black saw this knight coming into this square. Let's see, I'm not sure if I examined this move or not. Let's suppose we allow that. Okay, you're not getting rid of the knight. He's there for the whole game if white wants it. Black's not going to give up his queen for it.
Check.
But let's try to use the light squares. Okay, the rules of chess say you have to get out of check. So we're down to 2 legal moves. Now, let's put some pressure. Okay, we're basically saying, I want to tie your queen down. If you want to get trigger happy,
check,
and collect some pawns, well, I get to do the same.
Check.
And let's see, black is still a pawn ahead. White probably has perpetual check threats. Yeah, maybe there's not enough here for black. But now black decides that it's time to get rid of the queen. Now here, this is a remarkable position. Black is this, and I'm going to recommend. I'm not going to cover everything here. I recommend you sit down. Don't use a computer. Sit down and evaluate this, because actually Queen D5 is a blunder, and white should win now. And the winning method, surprise, surprise, is to go into king and pawn ending down a pawn. And it has to do with the fact that white has some incredible positional advantages. We start with B4. Now, what does that do? Well, it cripples these pawns. It also, we have these squares taken away from black. So white right now is threatening to come up here, take the pawn, or head in either direction. So black needs a little defense. Let's go here. Okay, now black got there just in time. But unfortunately for black, white has 2 tempo moves here. One is H5 and one is C3. Okay, somebody says lagging and frozen. Sorry. Well, this recording hopefully will come out. So you make this one, and black must give ground, and white seems to be winning this. So this is a natural move. We assume the queen trade will win, but it was done without proper calculation. And maybe you assume the queen trade will lose, but because of the weakness of the black pawn formation, by advancing this pawn, black is giving himself a losing game. Now here, black made in my opinion, an unnecessary king move. Okay, he chose to bring his king over here. Well, one of the things about queen and pawn endings is that we get our king checked a lot. As much as we don't want to, it's going to happen. But a queen versus a king on a lone board can't give a mate without the king's help. So when your queen checks your king around a lot, that king can start advancing up the board, and eventually, the side doing the checking runs out, and then new things start happening. Some of the elementary endings, queen and pawn versus queen, exactly this happens, and you have to do a lot of maneuvering to get a winning game. Okay, so let's go forward. So this was unnecessary. And now black is under the assumption that if he trades,
check,
that he's winning, but as he does this trade, he now does a little counting and he sees that this king is closer. Had this king been here, we can argue black is winning, and white never would have made this move. But now this king is approaching, but it isn't that simple. But black took the rationale that he was losing, and he stopped thinking. He still had about 15 minutes on his clock, and could have stopped and thought for 10 minutes. Now, black chooses a very passive way to defend this. Now let's just go forward a few moves, and we'll come back. Now at this point, black is winning. Okay, I'm sorry, black is now losing. I apologize. But one interesting thing is that this king ended up on d7. It took him 1, 2, 3, 4 moves to get there. But one thing black failed to consider was coming up here. And even if you go to d7, it still takes the same 4 moves to get there. But suddenly there's a new option for black, and that's to come up here. So if white plays here, suddenly we have some new and interesting possibilities. For instance, let's go the shortcut method. King here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 9 moves to queen a pawn. Let's see, could he have done it quicker? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. It's pretty much 9 moves. So when black's making those 9 moves, so is white. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Now, where did this king end up? He ended up right here. So black should strive to queen this pawn. It will queen with check. So let's get rid of the arrows by moving forward. And black is in turn queening
check,
at a time, and he's not only that, he's queening with check. So this becomes a winning game for black. Now, white doesn't have to fall into this. White has other resources. Another important move black could throw at white is to shove this pawn here, which he did later. But by then, the king already had dominating position. Now, was talking to KtFighter after this game, and he mentioned how he lost, and I did a quick look, and there's other lines here, but like you just said, look at this idea. Advance this pawn up here. If you can get it to g4, and this king is way down here, you have a pawn breakthrough. Let's look briefly at that. Okay, we're going to still go back. Let's see, let's do it now. Now, one possibility is to come here at some point, but that's just going to pitch this pawn. So we're going to wait to do that. But let's see. I think it depends if black delays this. But if you come around this way, we go here. And now we can bring the king over. And the moment this king gets too far from home, suddenly black is going to win. Because takes, we push again. Now let's see, is the king close enough to get this through? Maybe, but black is queening first.
check,
Now, even though black is queening with check, in this variation, black is ahead of pawn. So, wait, we got to be careful. There's no funky mate in here. No, there isn't. Okay.
Check.
Or no trick to steal the queen.
Check.
But it gives you some of the ideas. There's plenty of stuff here, and king and pawn endings can really be tricky. So let's try it a little bit later. Now black is 2 moves away from, 3 moves from collecting this pawn. This pawn becomes the threat. But I don't know, black should be okay here. Now let's see, it gets tricky. And maybe black should have played a b4 in here. Now white has 2 separated pass pawns. Black's king can't stop them both. But black has separated pawns too. Now here white's going to queen first. But black has extra pawns. Now, let's see. This
Check.
idea will lose for 1.
Check. Check.
Because this pawn sneaks through. Okay. Anyway, there's a lot to it. As the game finished, let's go through what actually happened. Now it's definitely losing for black. And see, this defeated the whole purpose of trying to make a breakthrough. Now, black's pawns are immobilized, and he can't do anything with them. Well, he can. He can still play this, but this only works if you have some piece in here, other pieces on the board to collect these from behind. Usually a queen. Okay. So that pawn just runs, and it's all over but the shouting. And now suddenly white's a pawn ahead, and black's pawns are immobilized, and black wins. Okay, so let's see. Let me do this. I've done it a couple times before. Maybe you haven't seen this before. If you have, well, let's see it again. I have to pull up my other library. Okay, so I'm 158, I think. Yep. Okay. This is a famous game. Stoltz cashed in, The Hague, 1928. I met Isaac cashed in a few times. At one time, he was arguably the 4th best player in the world in the late 20s. The 30s beasts weren't beasts yet. Bofinic, Fine, Reshevsky, Solo Floor, and so forth and so forth. The best players were Alyakin, Capablanca, and Lasker was still up there. But he stopped playing chess professionally to focus on his job as an accountant. He had a wife and children that needed taken care of. And the game scores, I recall, only materialized in recent times. His son found it among his father's possession. Only the endgame was shown. And I'll show you when we get to the endgame position. This has a really interesting tactic that didn't happen. The game is pretty much uneventful, but I'm going to point out the tactic. Scotch game, very, very drawish. I think Stoltz was a Swedish player. Okay, so white's up a pawn, but black is threatening to win the exchange. So this is a very, very interesting tactical position. It looks like maybe white has blundered, but white has a very nice move here. and to move his rook to e3. So, if you've seen this already, it's fun to see it again. If you haven't, question is, can black take the rook safely? And the answer is no. Because if you take it, it's white to play and win. You've probably seen this combination before. I actually did it in a blitz game once. But I'm going to check him.
Check.
Now, clearly, if he takes the knight, and that's black's best move. What's white ahead here? A queen for a rook and a bishop, and he has an extra pawn. Isn't that enough to win? I think so. But if you don't, whoops, over here.
Check.
If you don't, you move the king.
Check.
The king gets
Check.
back rank mated sideways. Okay, got to play that.
Checkmate.
And there's your mate. So Cashin didn't fall for it. And some more exchanges. And this is the position that's in the famous position. It's in all the endgame books. Well, not all of them, but it's in a lot of endgame books. The ones that count. It's in Reuben Fine's Basic Chess Endings. It's in Averbach's Bishop versus Knight Endings. It's in Shereshevsky's endgame strategy. It's in Sharon's endgame books. And Shereshevsky explains the strategy that this. He says, at first glance, it appears this game should end in a draw, that black has no advantage at all. But in fact, black does have an advantage. The advantage is the bishop pair. And, I'm sorry, it's not a bishop pair. The bishop over the knight. When there's pawns on both sides of the board, the bishop is superior. Now, how does black play this for a win? Well, the trick is to use the king and the bishop to force the white pawns to advance, to create entry squares and eventually steal a pawn, create a pass pawn, and promote it. And Cashin proves that brilliantly. And we'll see the advantage of the bishop and the knight in a moment. See, the bishop could lose a tempo, the knight can't. If you know what triangulation is, when we try to lose a tempo with the king, we make a triangle to come back to where we started. Okay, so eventually white either has to move the knight, allowing some concession, or he has to start moving his pawns. He chose to move his pawn, but that creates an entry square. Now the king and bishop are going to coordinate to
check
attack on through this square. Here comes the king.
Check.
Now the king is going to get into g4 in a minute. But not yet. Still not yet. Oh, yeah, he did. Black defends, or white defends. Now he can't take it yet. But now the pawn is a goner. So in just 15 moves, a little more than that, 19 moves, black has achieved a winning ending. That ace pawn is too strong.
Check.
And white tried to set up counterplay on the queen side, but it was too slow. And after this, white resigned. Well, not quite. After that, he resigned. Now, back in 88 or 89, I had a game that I played at the old Riverside Chess Club, and met at the University of California, Riverside. And every now and then, we're in a classroom. Every now and then a custodian would show up and, my job is, I've been assigned, I have to get this room done tonight. We have to do this, that, and the other thing, and you guys have to leave. So we had to adjourn our games and finish them later. Let me bring another game up. Oops, I just closed ICC down. Dang it. I'm good at that. Okay, well, I'll bring it back. Okay. All right. Let me get him back up here on the screen. Here he's back. That's not it. What did I do wrong? Is that I see? Oh, that's no. I see what I've done wrong. Okay, hang on. There it is. Okay, now give me a second here. So anyway, I had an adjourned game, and guess what kind of endgame it was? Well, it was bishop versus knight. So normally we'd have played it out that night, and who knows what would have happened. But I had a chance to go home and open up my book and look through it, and I found the Cashed and Stoltz game, and I'm playing black here. 1 second. So, I'm not going to really pay too much attention to the opening or the middle game. The key is the end game. This guy's rated like 2100 something. Ron Meyer is his name. I think I beat him every time I played him, maybe 3 times. I don't think he ever got a draw from me. Okay.
Check.
So that means we got to trade knights and rooks. Hey, look, I got my pawn chain break in. So we're close to getting the rooks off. Just have to open up that F file. Almost there. Look at that. Oh, not quite. There it is. Oh, goodbye, rooks. Okay, so somewhere in here we had to adjourn. Now my opponent went home thinking this was a draw. I don't think he worked on it that hard. I studied this. And it's trickier because I can end up with fewer pawns. And I'm trying to use my king to come down here. Like I say, I've got some weaknesses in his position. I didn't have to do the maneuvering. The Kashdan had to, but I know what my plan is. But meanwhile, he's getting rid of pawns. We're down to 3 pawns each. I can maybe trade 1 off. Probably not 2, because he'll sack his knight for the last one or something. Now, unfortunately, all my pawns are on the color of my bishop, but can't have everything you want. And you always watch out for knight checks and knight forks, but here I come. And he manages to keep me out. And look, I can't penetrate with my king any further. But the bishop loses tempos. And slowly but surely, I'm working my way in. Now I think I could take on A2 finally. Yep. Now,
check.
Here comes, not quite, one of the critical moves. If he takes my bishop, I take his knight. So what I needed to play was this. The game actually becomes a draw and he blunders. I did a thorough analysis of it a few years ago, and I thought I was winning all along,
check.
but I wasn't. But he should be holding this by the skin of his teeth. He has an advantage on the light squares. He's keeping me out. And I don't have a light squared bishop. And now I'm getting closer, but wait, let's see. I guess I get checked.
Check.
Okay, let's see. Now here he blundered. Now I have him. Because the only move that stops from queening, he has to step into a fork.
check.
So that would be the end of that game. So, you know, you think you never get these bishop and knight endings, you do. They don't come up all that often at all. They're actually quite rare, but they can happen. And if you have the bishop for the knight, you have something to play for. Now let me see if I have this other game in my, it's not in this one. Let me see if I put this in this library and left it there. I want to show you another. Here the bishop dominated, but we're going to show one where the knight does a number on the bishop. If it's in here. I thought it was in here. It is. Okay, so this is a fun game. I was black. This was played in Whittier, California at Richard Nixon's alma mater, his high school, Whittier High School. And I got an advantage in the opening, but I misplayed it. That's not important. I ended up losing my pawn, but this has a totally fun finish. Okay.
Check.
So my problem is I end up blundering my e. He ends up winning my e-pawn. I don't care about the bishop pair so much. I'm good with knights. But he's able to surround it. And
check.
we're not to the key position yet. This was played at game 61 minutes with a 5-second delay.
Check.
So here I'm down a pawn, but I know the strategy is to get my pawns on light squares, because if I do that, he can never attack my pawns with his bishop. So
check.
Now here, this is interesting. Here we are at move 30, and I asked myself when I played g6, what happens if white marches his king down here? Well, clearly I have to march my king down here, and I prepared an idea for that to happen. It's going to happen, but way down the line. So it'll be interesting when we get there. For white to maybe win this, he might have to do this at some point, and then try to run his pawns at some point. But the fact that see how every one of my chess pieces is on the light squares. It's very hard for him to penetrate. Like, in effect, I pretty much have a fortress, and I have some videos up I made here on Twitch where I talk about fortresses. How does this king penetrate on the queen side? I've got all the entry points covered. So the only way he can penetrate is if he uses the bishop to gain a tempo on the knight and drive me out. Now, interesting thing for Norbertino, we have the same pawn structure, and I talked how the 2 can hold back the 3, so that actually comes into play here. So let's move forward a little bit. He is slowly, surely able to make a little bit of progress on the queen side, based on the bishop can lose a tempo. We got into debate afterwards. I said it was probably a draw, and everyone's telling me no, and he's sitting there saying, I've got the better minor piece. Well, yeah, but your better minor piece is useless here. My knight is superior. This is a good knight versus a bad bishop. But he wasn't able to find any way to win it. We'll see what happens.
Check.
See, I'm just
check.
Keeping him out of c4. He's trying to get that pawn up to c4 so we can get a passed pawn. I'm not letting him, but finally eventually he's gonna get it in. There, he got it in.
Check. Check.
Look at that, 3 checks in a row. Check, check, check. That's fun. Let's hear that again.
Check. Check.
Oh, one got shut out. I guess I went too fast.
Check. Check. Check.
Okay. How often do you get to do that, huh? Okay. So he doesn't really, here he doesn't have entry squares. He can't get in this way. He can, and as long as I can find a way to get my knight back over to c6, his king isn't coming in on the queen side. He's going to try. But look, my knight's cut him up. He has no way in. So he finally decides to shove the pawn, but now my light square blockade, he can't make progress. So I think this position is a draw. Now, let me go 2 more moves. I'll explain what happened next. At move 50, I stopped keeping score, so did he. And so the next 20 some odd moves are not exactly as they were played, but they're as close as I could remember. And I got to the effective, I got to the key sequence. Okay, so I'm just finding moves. And I was able to trade. I was able to win the pawn back, and then I got rid of the queenside pawn. So I don't remember. This is the best I can remember how it happened. And success. So now the game is a draw. But actually, if anyone's better here, it's black. And the reason is this pawn's on one side of the board. So white's under the misconception that because he has the superior minor piece, he has the winning chances. Well, actually, black has the winning chances here, although black shouldn't win.
Check.
So now we're close to that scenario I said where this comes down here, but not yet. He can't get in there. You know, now running out of pawns. And I offered him a draw somewhere in here, and he declined. Wanted to keep playing. And here comes his king, just like I predicted.
Check.
And now he's forced me back here. And this was something I saw way back around move 30. KtFighter was here when this game was played. This was funny. So I had an idea, and I set it up once, and unfortunately he either saw it or just missed it. And I've got my idea here. Now he brought his king out, which is a smart thing to do. And I invited him to go back.
Check.
And he does go back. And I try to set it up again. And, you know, we're both down to just our delay. You know, that's all we had, maybe 2 seconds each. But he goes and attacks my knight. I guess that's what happened. And I made, you know, you think about what does black do here. And I played my move. And I said one word, a compound word at that. And there's about 10 people watching, and they all groaned, "Oh my God."
Checkmate.
There it is. Isn't that pretty? So I had this plan way back around move 30. And, you know, he said, "How do you see all that?" Well, it's not that hard. Okay, let's go back to that key position. Where was it? Yeah, we'll go back to move 30. So 47 times 2 is 94. So back 94. Okay. It's white to play here. Now, when you have forced moves, it's not that difficult to think forward. Okay, now, it's easy to see that white can attack that pawn in 3 moves. It's also easy to see that black can defend that pawn in 3 moves. And now, you're thinking about it, it's possible that I could conceivably get this knight to, well, actually, I can't get him to f7 early enough. Let's see, king here. I can get him to f7, okay,
Check.
keeping him out of here, but I can't keep him out of here. I would need to answer king f4 with knight f7. And then his king is shut off. So it's not difficult to see this. You know, it's only 3 moves analyzed, and it's forced. But I also saw in this position that if the knight now gets to f7, it's a checkmate. So, this was planned way back at move 30. And I never in my fondest dreams that I believe it would actually happen. And when I set it up the first time, he didn't play into it, and I assumed he saw it. But I had a chance to try it again, and I certainly did. So, it's not that difficult to see this if you're paying attention to the board. So here, I would play knight d8. Whoops. Well, when it's his move, he gets a move first. What are you going to do for him? Let's try this. Okay, now I'm going to do this. Now if he plays h5, trying to crack me open,
checkmate.
There's the mate. But I got it in the final position, and
checkmate.
Nobody could believe it. So it was it was one of my memorable wins. Anyway, I'm looking at the board. The way the broadcast goes, way behind. I've currently finished the other game, and the board is showing no, it's showing the current game. Okay, I thought it still showed Cashden and Stoltz. Okay, let's just skip forward. Anyway, hello to, looks like GG Hellas. So, this was a case, knights and bishops, they're fascinating endings. Knights are cool pieces. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take a quick break and then come back and find something